Okay, so welcome to week 9. How's everybody doing? At the end of week 9, how's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. Okay, it's good to see everybody. So today I want to review a couple of recent announcements that I sent you, and then I would like to cover our week 9 concepts, which is human abuse and violence, cultural influences, cultural influences in nursing. And then I have the books pulled up to your readings. I want to point out a couple of things within those readings that I want you to be make sure you have a good understanding of. And then we'll do a case study. We'll do a case study on cultural competence towards the end of class. Okay, how does that sound? That sound okay? Okay, all right, fantastic. All right, I'm going to share my screen and bring up a couple of announcements I want to go through with you. I know the announcement, like I told you guys this past weekend, was going to be a long one. It was going to be the roadmap. Okay, we'll go through that in a minute, but I wanted to go through this announcement for this particular class, which is week 12 attendance. Okay, your week obviously, your week 10 attendance is taking the exam next week. Your week 11 attendance is taking your HESI. Taking your HESI gives you, that will automatically give you attendance. But then in week 12, you were also supposed to attend class in week 12 to get attendance. But Friday, the grade books will be closed by Friday. So in order for you to receive attendance, I gave you a couple of options for week 12, and that's on Monday and Tuesday. These are my other sections. However, I can't remember which student sent me a message, a student from Scranton, that said that they cannot attend either because of class and clinicals. So what I'm going to do, at least for the Scranton students, and I'll open it up to everybody else, is I'm going to create another option on, and Scranton students speak up. I'm going to create, I think it was Tuesday that you had all the conflicts. I was going to create another time slot on Monday morning. Um, let's have the Scranton students speak up here. Was it Monday morning that you didn't have any conflicts? I'd have to go back to the message. Who's from Scranton
We
here?
we have a class at 2:30,
Okay, 2:30
but
on Monday,
yes.
and then there was something about clinicals on
Yes,
Tuesday.
clinical we have from 7 to 5 on Tuesday.
Tuesday, right. So with that being said, I'm going to create another option for Monday morning. Okay, for definitely for the Scranton students, but I'll open that up to the whole class. Okay, so you would have three options, probably mid-morning Monday. I'll schedule that way before your class. Does that sound good? So I'll send out an additional announcement uh, either today or over the weekend for additional opportunity for week 12 attendance. Okay, on Monday morning. All right, so this whole class would have three different options. A Monday morning class, let's see, a Monday morning class, a Monday afternoon class, and a Tuesday afternoon class. How does that sound?
Good.
Will that accommodate all this? I think that will accommodate all the students from this class. Okay, so I just wanted to make that clear about week 12. You are still required to get attendance for week 12, and it's a very abbreviated class where we just do end of the term kind of closure and talk about the term and do end of the term evaluation. So it's a very short class, usually about 15 minutes. It's not a full class. Okay. So anybody have any comments about that? So the Monday morning class would accommodate the Scranton students, right? Okay. So the announcement I sent over the weekend was the roadmap. Weeks 9 through 12. Since we have so much going on, it's easier to put this all in one announcement so you can kind of have your roadmap, actually. Has everybody seen this announcement and read through it? Does anybody have any questions about it? All right, so start this week, going into the next 2 weeks is really busy. All right, we have a lot of things due this week. Okay, you have your NCLEX assignment, you have a HESI case study. That's separate from the case study we're doing in class today. The one we're doing in class today is just a classroom activity. Your HESI case study is actually for a grade, right? And a lot of you have already done that. You have your HESI prep assignment that's due Sunday. Hope you're working on that. That is going to be your study guide for your HESI. So that is due Sunday. And then this week, or today, tomorrow, and Sunday are the reviews for exam 3. Mine is after class today. Professor Ford does hers tomorrow, and Professor Kershaw does hers on Sunday. And at the bottom of this announcement, I sent you the review schedule. Okay, it's right down here. So you have the review schedule for today, tomorrow, and Sunday, as well as your HESI reviews. Okay, because next week you're going to be taking your exam 3, but next week is also HESI prep week, which is the week before HESI. So you have the opportunity to attend 3 different HESI reviews outside of class. Okay, so that's what this schedule is down here. It's your exam 3, which is in the purple for all 3 of the professors. Okay, and then in the blue is your HESI reviews for next week. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I have a question on the HESI prep assignment.
Uh-huh.
How much is that worth on our
Five-
grade?
5%.
5% of the grade?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so that's this week. All right, you were also sent a concept recording with the PowerPoint in this announcement for week 9. And then next week is obviously exam week, so you'll be taking your exam 3 a week from today. We'll post the grades like we have been on that Saturday. We'll get together on Saturday morning, the 3 professors, and go through any kind of exam analysis we need to do. Okay, and then next week you have your vulnerable populations paper due, which is your PowerPoint research paper on a vulnerable population in your community. Okay, and then next week, as we talked about, are the HESI reviews. I've offered some advice for preparing for HESI. You have your HESI prep assignment, you have your 3 exam study guides, you have your weekly notes that you've been taking, you have your weekly PowerPoints, you have weekly concept recordings, and then certainly quiz rationales. I'm actually still working on the quiz 5 rationales. I have an IT ticket in to see if they can resolve that and put those back into your module so you can see the questions and rationales. If I don't have any resolution by the end of today, I'm probably just going to copy and paste the quiz questions with the correct answers and the rationales into a Word document so that I can post it in the announcement so you'll have that. Okay, because I do want you to review quiz rationales in preparation for exam 3. Okay. And then you go right from exam 3 in week 10 right into your HESI in week 11. I've sent out a tentative schedule. Have your campuses been contacting you about when to schedule your HESIs for? Have you heard from your campuses? Yes? I'm getting it. Brinley's shaking her head. Okay. So that spreadsheet that I sent last week, there were 3 campuses that hadn't reported schedule dates for community HESI. But hopefully your campuses are reaching out to you. And remember, I don't have anything to do with your HESI schedule. You're scheduling your HESI. That all is done through your campus. Okay. The other thing I attached is your HESI remediation guidelines. And you've seen these before. These are the hours that are required for remediation, depending upon what your HESI score was. So you have that as an attachment below. Let's open that and I'll show you that. You guys have seen this before, correct? Your HESI remediation guidelines for the hours required. All right, so that will be used after you take your HESI, however many hours you're going to need to do remediation. Okay, and I would suggest after you do your, try and do the remediation as soon as you can after taking the HESI. I realize you have other HESIs during the week, but don't wait until Monday. Okay, all HESI remediation is due that Monday of week 12, which is September 23rd by midnight. Don't wait till the last minute. You know, if you run into technical issues or something happens and it's not letting you complete it, if it's not completed by Monday night, you end up having to take a 0 for the HESI, okay, if remediation isn't completed. All right, so get that done way before that Monday. Okay, please. And I'll be sending you reminder emails over the weekend because I check HESI remediations every day of HESI week and try and keep track of students that haven't completed it and remind you over that last weekend to get it done before that Monday. Okay. And then we've already talked about attendance for week 12. I'll send the updated additional slot for Monday morning. Okay. Do you have any questions? Any questions based on that announcement, attendance for week 12? I sent out early last week, I sent out mid-module assessments. I always like to wait. I know they're supposed to go out after week 6, but I like to wait till the end of week 7 so that we have exam 2 grades posted because a lot of students bring their grades up and don't fall below that 78% at risk. And a lot of students did, so that's fantastic. Exam 2 grades overall work quite well for this class. But if you did receive a mid-module assessment last week and you still haven't reached out to me, students below a 78% KGA receive them. I've already heard from lots and lots of students, and I've actually met with lots and lots of students. But if you are a student who hasn't reached out to me to talk about the last 3 or 4 weeks we have in class, or 3 weeks we have in class, please reach out to me so we can get together for a brief kind of strategy meeting. Okay. I think those were all the housekeeping items. Any questions?
I have a question.
You bet.
I came in just a couple minutes late, so I was missing the week 12 meeting. Did you say that that was going to be on the Tuesday, not the Friday?
In week 12, to get attendance, I gave you guys some options of attending my Monday and Tuesday sections. Since we won't be having class on the Friday of week 12, the grade books will already be closed. So I sent you guys an announcement of 2 opportunities, Monday and Tuesday, during my Monday and Tuesday classes. The Scranton campus had clinicals in class during both of those times. So I'm going to be scheduling a 3rd opportunity for this class to get attendance for week 12 on Monday morning. Okay, so you'll have 3 opportunities to get your week 12 attendance. I just haven't posted that 3rd one yet, but there'll be a 3rd one for Monday morning. So you
Okay,
have to attend. I'm
Do we
sorry,
have to
go ahead.
reach out to you for it or just
Nope,
attend?
you just show up for one of them. And it's a
Okay.
very short class, maybe 15 minutes. We just talk about end of the term. We talk about the term, how it went. I like to get your feedback. We do some end of the term advising. Okay, does that
Okay.
help, Casey?
Yes, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Any other questions about what we just went through? Okay, I want to make sure everybody's clear since there's a lot going on the next couple of weeks for you guys. All right, so let's talk about some of the 2 last concepts to cover: human abuse and violence, cultural influences, and nursing. So human abuse and violence, what do you think about? What kinds of violence, what kinds of abuse do you think about when we address this topic? I'll start. Family violence. What kind of violence occurs within the families? What are the different types of violence?
You mean
Verbal.
like,
Pardon me?
you mean like mental and physical, like
Yeah.
stuff like
Like child
Partner.
abuse, right?
Partner,
Emotion.
Emotional abuse,
partner violence,
intimate partner violence, domestic violence, child abuse,
Sexual.
sexual abuse,
elderly,
elderly
Abuse.
abuse. Absolutely. What about human trafficking? Right? Abuse, violence comes in many ways, right? Maybe assault, murder, battery, suicide, type of violence against yourself, right? We know that violence is obviously a maladaptive coping mechanism, right? It's more common in vulnerable populations, just like substance abuse is. Violence is a means of exhibiting or regaining control. We know that there are high levels of violence, that high levels of violence are tied to health disparities and adverse health outcomes. What does that mean? Why is violence, what are some examples of violence being tied to health disparities? Maybe people living in poverty, families living in poverty, lack of education,
Unemployment.
unemployment. Excellent, excellent. Yeah. Families, individuals dealing with mental health issues, inadequate coping strategies, substance or drug abuse, alcohol abuse. Right? People, we know that people who have become involved in violence typically have previous exposures to some sort of violence as a child, as an adolescent, as an adult. Abusers were often beaten when they were kids, or maybe they witnessed their siblings being beaten, or their parent, mother or father, being beaten. Right? They learn that violence is a way to manage conflict. What does it mean what does it mean for nurses to be mandatory reporters? What does that mean?
It means
gotta
that you have the power to report what you saw. If you see abuse, you need to report it.
Okay. Go ahead, Clorinda.
I wasn't gonna say nothing, but it's like mandatory to report with the elderly and with children.
Mhm.
So, like, if a child comes in and they have bruises, we have to report that. And you know, with elderly, we have to report any kind of like if we see bed sores, malnutrition, things of that nature. If they live in a home or stay in a facility, but like if a middle-aged woman comes in with bruises, we just have to ask her what's going on in her home. We wouldn't report that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as far as our reporting responsibilities, is that just in our work setting? No, that's anywhere, right? Anywhere, whether it's a home, neighbor's house, grocery store, right? Any place, out the park, we are mandatory reporters. There's two types of neglect: physical neglect and emotional neglect. Okay, physical neglect refers to the failure to provide adequate food, clothing, shelter, hygiene, or necessary medical care. That's physical neglect. Emotional neglect refers to the omission of providing basic nurturing. Nurturing, acceptance, care that's essential to growth and development. That's being neglected. We also know that there are different reactions to violence. Kids kids who are exposed to violence, whether they're victims of violence or they're witnesses of violence, they become very high risk for substance abuse issues, mental health issues, maybe even self-harm, maybe even suicidal ideations, right? Women, on the other hand, also exhibit side effects, chronic headaches, palpitations, sleep disturbances, maybe sexual dysfunction, recurrent vaginal infections, right? They may experience more miscarriages or preterm birth. Okay? One of the things we talk about when we talk about violence is intimate partner homicide. Okay? One of the top risk factors for intimate partner homicide is a previous domestic violence incident. Other risk factors that contribute to intimate partner homicide may be access to guns, estrangement, separations, maybe threats of killing you by weapons, non-fatal strangulation. Elders. Okay, what do we from your readings? What did you learn about potential types of elder abuse, and what signs and symptoms to look for, what signs to look for in elder abuse? What kinds of abuse can happen with elders?
Physical,
financial,
if you saw like bruises
Yep.
and stuff.
financial,
Financial, meaning what?
meaning like their family can take advantage of their financial situation, spending their money
Okay.
without them knowing and stuff.
Okay. Okay. What else?
Sexual,
Sexual.
if you see like they're scared or if they might have like discharge, bleeding and stuff.
Okay. What about emotional abuse? What might that look like with the elders?
They scared. They don't want to be left with certain family members.
Maybe name calling, embarrassing them, threatening to not be able to see family, right? We know that elders are at risk for many kinds of violence, physical, emotional, financial, as well as neglect. Emotional abuse includes behaviors maybe to try and demean the client, to alter their self-esteem, name calling, scaring them, embarrassing them, maybe destroying property, not letting them see family. Right? Elder
Or
abuse.
sometimes they separate themselves. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Sometimes they separate themselves.
Mm-hmm. Well, and a big concern is fear of the client is fear of abandonment, right? So they're dependent upon people taking care of them, right? And caretakers, if they're abusing and neglecting, may threaten that as well. Another type of violence is suicide. Okay. Suicide, which is self-directed violence, violence against yourself. It's actually the second leading cause of death in young adults. What would you think would be some leading risk factors to suicidal ideations?
Depression.
Depression
Bullying.
is big one. Yep. What
Bullying.
else?
Bullying,
Pardon me?
bullying,
Bullying. Maybe
Loss
mental
of
health.
loved ones.
Yeah. Maybe mental health disorders, substance abuse issues. Right? So some primary prevention activities with regards to youth violence. Some of the things that we did in the school system I worked at, we did school-based education on coping mechanisms. We did educational sessions with both kids and with parents, right? Trying to help teach parents good coping skills, help teach kids and parents anger management strategies. We implemented home visitation if we had concerns. Okay, we know that parents that have a lot going on, that have a decreased social support system, have additional risk factors. Maybe the family lives in poverty. Maybe there's been a divorce. Maybe there's been a death in the family. Okay, working with those families that we know and we identify are at risk. Right, a lot stems from the house. If it is an unstable house, and the kids are coming to school from an unstable environment, that usually manifests itself in the school setting. Right, so we tried a lot of primary prevention activities to be proactive with helping students identify bullying, identify harassing, talk about cyberbullying. So there's a lot of things that can be done, especially for the kids, proactively. And certainly secondary, we screened and identified kids and families at risk, right? I want to jump to the book here and change before we get into culture and go through your reading with regards to this is legal and laws and guidelines affecting nursing practice. So I want to change course here. So there are numerous laws and guidelines. This is in the ethics portion, okay, affecting our nursing practice. Okay. I want to review OSHA again, because you're going to see that come up again. What is OSHA? I know you can see it here, but what is overall, in a general picture, what does OSHA do? We talked about this when we did our occupational
Safety.
nursing. Safety of where?
The
The
workplace.
workplace.
The workplace. And what does OSHA do? What is OSHA's responsibility?
OSHA just kind of comes through, walks the grounds of your workplace to make sure everything is, I guess, safe for the
And that
work.
you're doing everything the right way and following the rules.
Exactly. OSHA sets up the guidelines for each workplace, whether it be a hospital, a dialysis center, an urgent care center, a restaurant, a bank, a recreation center. Every workplace has health and safety guidelines, right? And so OSHA is responsible for making sure those guidelines are followed. Okay, so that's one agency that that oversees safe work environments. Okay. The other law that we have in place is the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act. This is on page 35. This is in your this was your fundamentals reading, or part of it. Okay. The Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, okay, it's been around for a long time, 1974. Okay, and it's an act that defines what is child abuse and what is child neglect. Okay, so please be familiar with that. I want you to read what the guidelines are for that, since one of the concepts is human abuse and violence. So please be familiar with what the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act is. Okay. And then as far as some legal documents to be familiar with, obviously we have this client's medical record. We have our HIPAA laws, right? That's regarding patient privacy, right? We should all, working in healthcare, we should all be familiar with the HIPAA. Okay. We have consents and releases, whether it's informed consent, whether it's healthcare directives, living wills. Okay. Advanced directives. I want to talk about negligence and malpractice. Okay. Violations of the laws. All right. So there's a difference. Okay. Negligence, failing to meet the standard of care, failing to do something reasonable and prudent. Okay. That's negligence. Malpractice is actually negligence by a professional person. All right. So let's say the person committing malpractice does not act according to our professional standards of care as a reasonable professional would. Okay, so an example of malpractice would be if the nurse did not check in on a patient's vital signs after surgery, and the patient was hemorrhaging, patient went to shock and died. That is malpractice. Okay. So those are the two, with regard. So the two I would like you to know, be able to identify in a scenario given, was this negligence? Was this malpractice? Okay. Then the last topic to cover is culture. And I really like having this concept. I like tying in everything together at the end of the term. I know we've talked about culture and cultural competence throughout the whole term, but I like to pull it together at the end here. Okay, so chapter 14. I have several things highlighted. Chapter 14 that I want to review. Okay, so we know that culture is everything we believe to be true about the world from whatever culture you're in. Everybody's culture, whatever culture you belong to, is a set of beliefs, values, assumptions about life that we pick up from childhood. We're socialized to our culture, right? We know that different ethnic groups have cultural similarities and cultural differences. All right. So one's culture is usually maintained by a group of people who have the same beliefs. Okay. So culture is learned and acquired through childhood. It's shared by a group. It's incorporated into our identity. Okay, through shared experiences. Developing cultural competence. This is the section I want you to read, highlight to read in this chapter. Starts on page 193. Okay, developing cultural competence. We've talked about this over and over again. We're going to repeat it again. Cultural competence involves knowing first, we're examining our own values, right? Our own attitudes, our own beliefs, our own prejudices, if there are any, right? It involves us keeping an open mind and trying to see the world from a different cultural perspective. I have a great quote here that I love to read to my students at the end. Okay, because this is the end of our content. Take notes on this. To develop cultural competence means we need to be sensitive to the cultural implications during every encounter with every client. Meaning we need to avoid stereotyping based on race, or ethnicity. We always want to be asking questions to stimulate our learning about the client's culture. We need to avoid making assumptions about nonverbal cues from clients from unfamiliar cultures. We need to always be making the ongoing discovery of various cultures a priority in nursing practice. We're going to be working with clients of different cultures our entire nursing career. Are we not? So a few things about developing cultural competence. Some barriers. We've talked about these, but I want to review them. Stereotyping. That is when we apply certain beliefs and behaviors about a culture to an individual or group without actually assessing the individual needs. Stereotyping. Can somebody give me an example of a stereotyping comment?
All Black people steal.
There you go. Yep. The next one is prejudice. Okay, remember these are barriers. Right? Prejudice is defined in your book as an emotional manifestation or negative stereotype and deeply held beliefs by a group. An example of a prejudice is racism. Okay, that's when individuals or groups or institutions attempt to exercise their power against groups that are judged as inferior. What would be an example of that?
White supremacy.
Okay. And I know this is sometimes not a comfortable conversation to have, but like I said, we're going to be caring for different cultures throughout our whole nursing career. We need to really be able to assess our own feelings and our own beliefs. Do we have any prejudices? Do we have any stereotypes? Do we think that our culture is better than yours or somebody else's? Right? Because if you have those underlying beliefs, it's going to become difficult and challenging for you to care for people, families, populations of other cultures. Right? This next section is about cultural differences. Okay, so different cultures have differences with regards to maybe their time perception. They may be past oriented, present oriented, future oriented. Personal space, meaning how close do you get to people? Do you hug them? Do you not hug them? They may have cultural beliefs, values with regards to family, with regards to social organization, nutritional practices. Maybe they see end of life issues different in one culture than they do in the other. Healthcare beliefs. How is our family treated with medicine or holistic care? Okay, there's an excellent table 14.3 I want you to have a look at. Okay, these are common cultural values, practices, and beliefs. And I've highlighted Hispanic Americans and American Indians. Not that the rest aren't important, but I would like for you to know these two particular cultures and the details about these cultures for your next exam. But it's a very eye-opening chart going through some of the different common cultures. This is an excellent section I'd like for you to read through as well. It takes you through the nursing process and clinical judgment model with transcultural nursing. We don't need to go through it, but we don't need to go through it here, but I do want you to read as preparation for exam 3, this section. Okay. So that was some of the highlights in your book I wanted to bring up with regards to exam 3. And I'll cover more specifics about exam 3, what I want you to review in my upcoming review after class. So if you're not able to attend live, please listen to the recording of my review. Okay. So that's the last 2 concepts to cover: human abuse and violence and cultural influences in nursing. Does anybody have any questions? I want to go into breakout rooms, and somebody's going to need to pull up the cultural competence case study that was in your announcement from the weekend. It's at the bottom. Okay. And I want room 1 to answer question 1, room 2 to answer question 2, and then room 3 to answer question 3. I want you to spend
You
maybe
say that one time. You want us to pull what up?
the case study that I sent in the announcement. It says week 9 case study.
Okay.
All right, so I want you to go into your breakout rooms. This is a really good, this is a cultural competence case study, and it really reinforces everything we've been talking about with regards to cultural competence. All right, so maybe we'll spend about 10 minutes in the breakout room, they'll come back and we'll talk about it. Okay? Fatima and Destiny, can you join your groups, please? Fatima, are you there? Fatima, can you join your group for the case study assessment?
Yes, ma'am. I'm trying to see. I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah,
'Cause I'm
you
using my
should have an
tablet.
invitation to join.
Yeah. I'm using my tablet, but I'm trying to figure out because it's.
Okay. Hey, how'd you like that case study?
Well, me, Crystal, Jaleesa, and Bridget loved it.
Pardon me?
Me, Crystal, Jaleesa, and Bridget loved it.
Oh, good. All right. Let's pull it up. And I will send you this version with the oops, no, not that. This version with the answers and the rationales. So I always believe that rationales are a good way to reinforce learning as well. Okay, so I'll be sending this when I send the recording of the class. So let's talk about a couple of these first questions before we get into the case study. So I'm asking you now, what are some ways culture can affect the nursing practice? What do you think? How can culture affect the way we practice?
It could affect the treatment.
And how?
Some cultures don't believe in the way hospitals or medical treatments are done,
Mhm.
medication wise.
Okay. What are other ways that culture can affect nursing practice? What about if there are barriers? Barriers in language, barriers in beliefs, barriers in trying to look at the different culture through their eyes. Those can all affect the way we practice nursing, right? So what are some examples? Describe some methods for developing cultural competence to meet the healthcare needs of culturally diverse individuals or communities or organizations. What are some things we can do?
We can
Anybody have-
inquire. We can inquire.
Can inquire by asking. It's okay to ask clients about their culture and their values and their beliefs and their practices. I mean, in the end, we want to incorporate as much of a client's culture into the healthcare plan, the healthcare needs for that client, right? We talked about barriers, number 3. What are some other things we can do to learn about different cultures besides asking? What else can we do? Maybe ask coworkers that might be part of a certain culture, ask family members, do our own research, maybe participate in community activities. Let's say you're the community nurse and you have a lot of diverse cultures in your community. Maybe attend functions or cultural events, right? To learn about different cultures and their practices and their beliefs. Let's talk about the case studies. So we have Nancy, the public health nurse who's working in a clinic that provides services to a community of Hmong immigrants. Right? These particular immigrants are applying for immigration visas and are required to undergo medical screening. Primary purpose of conducting these examinations is to determine the presence of any communicable diseases and to vaccinate according to CDC guidelines. Okay, so this particular nurse is the first person to initiate contact with the new immigrants. She doesn't speak their language. She doesn't speak the language of the immigrants coming to the clinic, but she has access to an interpreter, very important. She's aware that the clients are nervous about seeking care because they're unfamiliar with U.S. health practices. So the question for room 1 was the public health nurse provides service to recent immigrants should be most concerned with which of the following? What is the biggest concern? Did you answer B?
Yeah.
Why is B the correct answer? It's not that all 4 answers are not correct, right? Obtaining an interpreter is important, delivering care within the financial guidelines of the patient, that's important, demonstrating understanding of non-traditional healing practice, that's all important. But the question was asking what's the most important? And as it says up in the case study, being knowledgeable about any high-risk diseases of certain populations is key. That's the most important. Okay, and the rationale explains that. So the nurse needs to know if there are any specific risk factors for any given immigrant population. And here's some examples. Southeast Asian population is often at risk for hepatitis, tuberculosis, intestinal parasites, visual, hearing, dental problems. We know that most of those conditions are either preventable or treatable if managed correctly. Right? So when we're working with different immigrant populations, once again, we have to consider how our own background, our own beliefs, and our own knowledge may be significantly different, or how it is significantly different from those that we are providing care to. Language barriers may interfere with efforts to provide assistance. We've talked about language barriers as a particularly common barrier. We need to understand if particular cultures have non-traditional healing practices that we should be aware of and that we can maybe incorporate into their care. Room 2, the nurse speaks English and Chinese. She's dealing with new Hmong immigrants who speak Laotian as their primary language, and they're not familiar with Western medicine practices. How is cultural competence demonstrated in dealing with the population? So room 2, did you come up with B and E?
We did have B and E.
You did. Okay. Okay. So correct answer is B and E. The nurse does provide care while paying attention to individual beliefs about pain, touch, modesty, and eye contact, right? Trying to look through the lens of their culture, right? And the nurse also provides care that acknowledges the differences in the ways individuals respond to illness and treatment. That is providing culturally competent care, right? Which the rationale acknowledges. Culturally competent nurses function effectively when caring for clients of other cultures. Okay, nurses who strive to be culturally competent respect people from other cultures and value diversity. And this helps them to provide more responsive care. Cultural competence also includes knowledge about the fundamental differences in the ways that clients and families respond to illness, respond to healthcare, respond to treatment. Okay. So examples we've talked about before is paying attention to dietary practices, pain management, death and dying. Different cultures look at death and dying differently. Modesty, eye contact, closeness, the touching of others. All these are going to look different in different cultures. We have to be aware of that. And we have to be knowledgeable. This last question is a good summary of all the different aspects of cultural competencies. So the nurse attends a class at the local Laotian Cultural Center so she can learn more about the customs and practices of the community she serves. This demonstrates which of the following elements of cultural competence. Room 3, did you come up with D as the correct answer?
Yes.
She's trying to become more knowledgeable, correct? With this particular culture. Right? So if we look at the rationale, cultural knowledge is information about organizational elements of different cultures and ethnic groups. Right? So the emphasis on gaining cultural knowledge is trying to learn about that client or their culture's worldview from their perspective. The more we have an understanding of the client's culture, the more it decreases the opportunity for misinterpretation, miscommunication, misapplication. Cultural desire. So we're just going through here. Whoops. The different parts of, oops, what am I doing here? Cultural desire. What is cultural desire? It refers to our internal, our intrinsic motivation to provide culturally competent care. Are we motivated to learn about different cultures, to learn about their values and attitudes, beliefs, practices? Do we have a desire to try and provide that care based on their culture? And then cultural skill is simply, do we have the skills to care for that client? Effective integration of what we know, our awareness, cultural knowledge, our awareness, to meet the needs of that client. Okay. And then back to cultural awareness. Are we aware? Is our own, have we done our own self-examination and in-depth exploration of our own beliefs and values? Okay. And how our own beliefs and values may influence our behavior in taking care of different cultures. We talked about this a lot when we talked about different vulnerable populations. How do you feel about the homeless population? How do you feel? What are your internal beliefs about the homeless population, people with mental health disorders, maybe LGBTQ community, teen pregnancy? If you're working out in the community, you're going to be working with lots of different vulnerable populations and lots of different cultures. So I do love to end the content part of this term with cultural competence, since it is one of the underlying factors of us being successful in our nursing profession, being able to care for so many different types of people from so many different age groups across the lifespan, vulnerable, not vulnerable, different cultures. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? I know we're done a few minutes early, but that's okay. Does anybody have any questions about what we covered today? Has the discussion about cultural competence helped? Has it made you think? Has it expanded your knowledge on how we will successfully become nurses and work for years through that profession? And we know that our communities are becoming more culturally diverse every day. So it doesn't matter where you work in the community or in the acute care setting, you are going to be exposed to many, many different cultures. Okay. All right. Questions? Comments? Okay. So we're done about 20 minutes early. I will stay on if anybody has any particular questions. Otherwise, if anybody's planning on attending the review in about 45 minutes, I'll see you then. If not, please watch my recording. Okay, if you can't come live, please watch my recording. Okay, and then you have 2 other opportunities tomorrow and Sunday to attend a review session, and you'll also have those recordings as well as I get them. Okay.
Do you have a couple minutes to meet with me really quickly?
Who's talking?
Jaleesa.
Sure. Yeah. Of course. Just
I
stay
would
on
like
after.
to talk after class too.
Yeah, just stay on after class. I'm going to stop the
Okay.
recording. Just stay on after class, and I'll answer any questions you might have. Okay. Hope everybody has a good weekend.
What time is the review, Professor Marvel?
6 o'clock, 45 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Welcome.